Okay, let's assume we have a new question. So given the employee relation, we want to project the department ID as well as the salary. How can we do this? So by checking this question first, we know we are doing a projection, right? We don't do selection here. We want to project some attributes from a relation, right? Therefore, we need to use the pi, right? So we can use the pi. We know the pi will have some attributes like a1 to an, right? As the target attributes we plan to get, and we're working on some relation, right? We may make the a1 to an as a subscript. So we have the pi a1 to an on some relation. So we know we are working on the employee relation, right? So we can change this R to employee. And we also want to get two attributes, department ID and salary. So we can change this a1 to an to the DPT ID and salary, right? We can remove the remaining ones. So we can represent the query we want to get as pi department ID salary as a subscript, and then we have parentheses, we have employee as the target relation we're working on, right? So we will represent the query as shown here formally, pi department ID salary and subscript on the employee table. Let's assume we have a table about employee as shown here. We plan to execute this query on this table. So I make some changes to the table data. Before we have Bob, the salary is different, right? Here we change the Bob salary to 30K as well. And we plan to execute this query on this new table. So by checking this query carefully, we are working on the employee table. We get two attributes, department ID and salary. In other words, SSN and name will be ignored and deleted, right? Formally, we can represent the output table as shown here, right? We have the new table. The schema is different from the input. We only have two attributes, right? The schema has been changed. We have two attributes, and we check all the data tables. Before we have three tables. Right now we still have three tables. And then we can check the tables very carefully, right? Before different tables, they are all different because the SSN is different, right? The key is different for different tables. However, if we do the projection of the department ID and the salary by deleting the SSN and name, the output relation will be much smaller in number of attributes. We only have department ID and salary. If we check these rows, we can find a problem, right? Because this row is the same as this one, right? They are both department ID is 1, salary is 30K. Remember, for the projection, we will do the duplication removal or elimination automatically. In other words, for these rows, we will only keep one record in the output. Therefore, so based on the employee relation, we execute the query on it. We can get an output. However, for the duplicated rows, we may need to delete the duplications. Like we can delete this row instead. And this one will be the final output by executing this query on the employees table, right? In this one, we have no duplications anymore. So remember, this projection will do the duplication removal automatically. So this is very important, especially when you are working on the queries in your project. This is a characteristics for this operation because the data you get will be slightly different from what you imagined, right? They will eliminate the duplications. And we can provide a comparison between the selection versus projection. So we think the relation as a table. In certain sense, they are very similar from each other, right? They are very similar to each other. I say that's similar because they are both do the extraction of some information from tables. Selection is to do the extraction in the rows. Projection is to do the extraction in the columns. They both do the data extractions. However, they are also different, right? So the selection is due by the rows. Projection is by the columns. And for the selection, we are sure in the selection results we have no duplications. In other words, this duplication elimination is not necessary for the selection. However, for the projection, it will be different. By removing some attributes, we may have some duplications, and they will be eliminated automatically by the yes operation. So they are different. And you may also wonder why we need both. Because for most of the queries we execute in our database systems, the output data will be very small. We only get a small size data as output. In other words, we may need to do the extraction in both rows and columns. Sometimes the output will be one single attribute. We want to get the value of some attributes. Then we need to do the pruning of both the rows and the columns for us. Therefore, the selection and the projection, they are both necessary. So in the following slides, we will show some examples which are using both selection and projection to help us to design some complex queries for us. Okay, so this is the comparison between a selection and a projection.